Today on the channel, I'm going to tell you some tales from the road from the days when I used to play in a tribute band. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to tell you some stories from the days when I used to play in a tribute band. Many years ago, about, well, I'd say 20 years ago, maybe a little bit more than 20 years ago, I was in a tribute band based out of Atlanta called Slippery When Wet. We were the ultimate Bon Jovi tribute band, and that band is still together to this day. My good friend Jason fronts that band, and I played in that project for several years and helped establish that project from the ground up. I'm very proud of my tenure with that group and helping that band create its fan base and sound, and I worked very hard to establish that project before ultimately leaving, which I may talk about in this video, but I was going to basically just tell you some stories of what it was like playing in a tribute band. Many years ago, in the early 2000s, before social media and iPhones, things were different. Things changed a lot with the advent of iPhones and PDAs and smartphones because everything is captured and nothing is private. And I feel like back in around 2010 is when everything really changed exponentially for us, in good ways, in some ways bad ways, but I'm getting off subject. What I'm saying is a lot of the stuff that I'm about to tell you is undocumented because we were living in the moment and we had fun and we took a lot of photographs, but there's very few videos of any of the events and things like that because technology just wasn't there for us, right? So playing in a Bon Jovi tribute band was really interesting. I started because my singer, we were doing a metal band and we were doing an 80s band, and we actually did a disco project, and he looked just like Bon Jovi from the Crush era. When I say he looks just like the dude, I mean he could pass as his twin, and we would get stopped on weekends. We'd be eating at restaurants and different things, Sticky Fingers, doing our thing on Saturdays in a different town, traveling, and people would ask him for his autograph. Dave Chappelle once actually invited him backstage because he thought he was Bon Jovi. And my friend Jason said to me and the guys, let's start this Bon Jovi tribute band. I think there's a future in this. And there weren't a lot of tribute bands out at the time. Now it seems to be a little bit diluted. And we created, in all honesty, we created the ultimate Bon Jovi experience, and it was very, very successful, and they continue to be very successful to this day. And what that led to was we had gigs booked out 6 months to a year in advance. I was working full time. I was raising 2 young sons, and I was gone 3 days a week. I would take vacation days, personal days, my days off. So I was grinding. If you're going to be a musician and you're going to be successful, in most cases you're going to have to sacrifice pretty much everything to be successful or to get to the next level. That's always been my experience, and the sacrifice is what leads us down these roads of troubles. There are many different avenues of troubles you can get into, and issues, and also many rewards and gratifying things. But traveling every weekend and going to different cities, and primarily the South. We were in Atlanta, we were in South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, Florida, Mississippi. We didn't venture east very often. We dominated the Southeast. Anytime we could travel to a gig within 5 to 8 hours. We would book it, and we would book the farthest gig out and then work our way back. For instance, we might play Mobile, Alabama, and then hit Montgomery, Alabama on the way home. And as a side gig, we might hit Huntsville on the way down or something. Just try to make it affordable. And these were good paying gigs. And being in a Bon Jovi tribute band, one thing about it is 98% of the fans are women. And they bring in guys that drink, but it was a good gig because we had a built-in crowd and people were fresh to the idea of tribute bands, and the tribute band was very good. We were very good, so we put on a very good show, which led to many interesting stories. So the point of this, a little bit of background information. So there's the setup. If you want to know more information, I can do more of these videos in the future. Let me know in the comments. So anyway, I'll just go down a few random stories that I think are interesting. I wanted to just chat today about it. I thought some of you might want to hear some of these stories. One day we were in New Orleans. We were at this place called the Southport Harbor, I believe. And this is before Hurricane Katrina. And one interesting thing that happened was we played this really nice club, and they had an upstairs room that was about 40 feet long that the bands could, any band that was playing could dress and change up there, and you could put your bags and things. And a lot of the local bands that would go to this club and hang out, and they kind of treated that room sort of like their clubhouse, which really wasn't cool, because if you're playing, that really should be your room, not every local band that's ever played that club's their clubhouse room. Well, we were getting ready to leave, and my drummer was in the van, passed out or something, and my bass player and I went upstairs to this room to get our bags. And we walk in this room, and there was a guy and his girlfriend up there, literally just going at it. And we walked in right at the very end, and they acted like nothing was really wrong with that. And when you're in a band and you travel and you see things, you kind of get numb to every level of debauchery and insanity that it's kind of sad. You get numb to it. You just really doesn't affect you, but you think about it later and laugh and just shake your head. But so we just sort of ignored these two people, and we went to the back of the room, and there was this one little section where there was a love seat in this side room, and there was a red fox, a stuffed red fox on a table behind the love seat. And we're in New Orleans, right? And so this girl walks back there, and that was in the room, and she wanted a picture with me and my bass player. And so she just sat right down between us, and we took the red fox. we held the red fox, and in a special way, and we took some photographs. We took some photographs for her and with her, and we were gonna take the red fox. We're like, man, we got this red fox has to come back with us. And the one dude heard us in the other room. He's like, whatever you do, don't take the red fox, man. And it was like some kind of voodoo ominous thing, like a dark cloud came over New Orleans when he said it. And we were like, oh, okay, because the owner will hunt you down if you take that red fox. So we put the red fox back on the table. And a couple weeks later, Hurricane Katrina came through and wiped that place out. We walked downstairs, and we were trying to get out of the place. We wanted to just leave, and my singer was talking to some girl at the bar, and we saw this pretty blonde, hair and in this back of this girl, and we're trying to get him away from this girl, and she turned around, and she had this glass eye, and when she turned around to look at us, the glass eye kind of like spun around and came focused on us, and that was kind of unusual. And it was sad because a couple weeks later we were playing in Nashville, maybe a month later, 3 weeks later, and she had made her way up to Nashville and was talking to us, and she had lost every single thing in her life due to Katrina. And we got to see her again. I can't remember what her name was, but that was a weird experience there. Every time I go to New Orleans, it seems like there's something dark. I love New Orleans. I got to get back. Haven't been there in a few years, but something dark and ominous always seems to happen in New Orleans, and it's a unique place. Another interesting story is one time we were playing in Valdosta, Georgia, and Valdosta, Georgia is in the middle of nowhere. We were heading down to play in Tampa, and then we were going to play Orlando and come back home. So we're in Valdosta on like a Thursday night, and Valdosta is way down at the bottom of Georgia, and there's not much in Valdosta, and so we stopped to go to this club and set up, and we made it for sound check, and the whole town was pretty sleepy. There wasn't a lot in Valdosta in the early 2000s. I'd say maybe around 2005, 2004. and I hadn't eaten. My drummer and I hadn't eaten, so we should have eaten on the interstate, but we just really didn't want to eat gas station food or some same crap like we always ate. We wanted to eat something decent, so we thought there'll be a restaurant in Valdosta. Well, we were wrong. There were no restaurants. Nothing was open. It was a Thursday night, and Slippery When Wet was going to play. You know, we were going to rock the town. So we set up and we sound checked, and we had a good turnout that night. But the point of the story is we hadn't eaten. So we went to the Piggly Wiggly next to this club. There was a Piggly Wiggly, which is a little grocery store, and I bought a can of soup, a Progresso soup, right? And I bought some plastic spoons, and I went backstage, and my bass player and my singer traveled together, and I traveled with my drummer, and me and my drummer came from Nashville. My singer and my bass player were from Atlanta, so we traveled in pairs, and they were kind of, my drummer and I we're heathens, man. We were, you know, we grew up, you know, from the country, man. We don't care. And my bass player and my singer were kind of metro guys, and I was going to eat this can of soup unheated with just a spoon. It was vegetable beef soup, and they thought that was the most revolting thing in the world. And so I ate this soup backstage, and you know, it was food, and they were just utterly disgusted by that. So they gave me the nickname Soup, the Soup, or Soupy. So I became known as the Soup. That was my nickname in the band, was Soup. And everywhere we would go, they would call me Soup. So and the jokes would linger on. And there was one time, it was my birthday a few months later, and we were in Greenville, South Carolina, and we were playing in this one club. We probably had 500-600 people in there packed like sardines. And there was this very attractive waitress that always waited on us when we were there, you know, and we all kind of thought she was awesome, and you know, like schoolboys around this girl, and they had talked to her, and she came up in her little dress and her little skirt and bobby socks, you know, she was dressed up real cute, and she had a silver platter, and my singer said, "Everybody, it's Marty's birthday. We've got him a special prize." And she brings out this silver platter in front of me, and she kneels down on one knee, and she opens the platter up. And there was a can of Progresso soup in front of 500 or 600 people, and everybody in the crowd just like looked at it, and they had no idea what it was. It was like crickets. And I looked behind me, and the band were just rolling. One day we were playing Georgia Theater in Athens, and the backstage room upstairs was awesome, man. You know, bands like the Ramones and the Chili Peppers and all these bands that had played there before, and it was Michael Stipe's club. So I had my amps. I had half stacks at the time. I was running 2 half stacks and 2 heads in stereo and a talk box. And I had my hats. I had like fedoras and cowboy hats and stuff on stands, and you know, everything was set up. You know, it's the big Bon Jovi show. And so we played this show in front of, you know, this packed Georgia Theater. And somewhere in the middle of the show, when we were about to play Wanted Dead or Alive, I had to go back and get one of my hats. And I had my hat on my amplifier, and I went to go get my hat, and I noticed that through the whole show there was like 2 or 3 cans of Progresso soup stacked up on my amps. So it looked like I was inventorying Progresso. So somebody had put soup on my amps, and I was playing this whole show being the rock star, and people seeing my amps with soup on my amps. So, you know, not the most interesting story, but it's funny when you get hazed and you get picked on and your brother's out on the road. Those soup jokes, to this day, I still get soup jokes. I'll tell you a few other funny stories. We were in Charlotte, North Carolina playing, I think it was Amos, and we had this place packed out, man. It was, you know, women wall to wall, and we were in the backstage area, dressing room area, and we were getting ready, and it took a while to get prepared. You know, we had to do our hair and get our coat and our shirts and everything just perfect, right? And our singer, you know, Jason, was very particular, you know, for the right reasons, and he wanted to always have that image that, you know, we were the band, and you know, we're going to go out and play this show, and you know, we were not that we were better than anybody. We had to uphold an image, and we had our own restroom in this backstage area, and might have been me. I'm not going to confess, but somebody stopped up the toilet about 15 minutes before the show was going to start, and Jason needed to use the bathroom, to go to the bathroom, right? And he comes out of the bathroom, he's like, the toilet's clogged up. I can't use it. He was really pissed off. and you could hear the PA, the music pounding, and people talking, and it was packed, right? And so he calls the club owner and tells him we need a plunger, and so the owner, replies back and says, okay, I'm going to bring it out. Be on the lookout. I'm going to make my way through the crowd. And in the office where the plunger came from was clear on the other end of this big club. So I'm peeking out of the door, and there's women and people crowded all over the place getting ready to watch this show, and we're in the back of this club, and I open the door, and they're kind of looking in the back room to see who's back there and see if we're coming out to play, and it's the whole rock star thing going on, and I see this plunger, this industrial plunger, like a scepter, above the crowd. I just see the big black, those industrial black plungers that are massive. I see it like above the crowd in this guy's hand, and he's parting the waters coming through the crowd, and everyone's kind of moving out of the way for the plunger, and he walks all the way through the club. He makes his way back to the rock star's room. And he knocks on the door, and he opens it up, and he hands the plunger in, and everyone's like looking in the door, and Jason's holding the plunger, and Jason looks at me and he goes, terrible. So that was our big night at Amos. We were filming a live DVD, and 15 minutes before the show, the plunger episode, you might have had to been there, but if you could have just saw the plunger separating the crowd, and then when everyone realized it was coming back to the to our backstage room, gosh, that's just so funny, man. We used to do these live at five events where, I don't know if they still go on in the South, but you would go to a city like Winston-Salem or Durham, Charlotte, North Carolina, places like like that, and they would a bank usually, or a place that had money to burn would hire a band to come out at 5 o'clock when everyone was leaving to go back home, and the band would start playing in a public area, like a not a venue, but sort of like an amphitheater type setting. They'd find a nice place for you, and they'd hire the sound and the lights, and you would just descend on this town about 1 in the afternoon and get ready to play. So we were playing for this bank. I forget what bank it was, and we were in Winston-Salem, and this was in the middle of the city, and there was this tall skyscraper. This bank was this big skyscraper, and we found somebody in the bank, said, we need to change. We have to get in. Part of our rider was we needed a dressing room, and we needed an area to be able to hang out, because we had a lot of stuff, and we had costumes and things. So they were like, half these places never pay attention to that kind of stuff. So they said, we're closing. The bank, this building, everyone leaves at 5 o'clock. So just go in this meeting room off to the side, right here in this lower floor area. So we walk in this. They said, you can use this room. It's unlocked. So we went in this meeting room, and we were in this conference room, really corporate, and it had this big ebony table that was probably 20 feet long, and there was glass windows along the side that went floor to ceiling. There were probably 10-foot ceilings, 12-foot ceilings, and so you could see everybody on the city street, but they could not see in because it was two-way glass. Well, my drummer was wild. I mean, drummers, if you ever traveled with a drummer, if you've played with a drummer for a long time, drummers are a different breed of people. They are crazy. And my drummer was, God love him, he's one of my best friends in the world. To this day, I love the guy. But he was so unpredictable and wild, and he made it a lot of fun, but sometimes he kind of made it not so fun, but most of the time it was fun. Well, he had no qualms. He would strip down naked, man. Like, we'd be changing, and we'd be in our boxer shorts and putting on not him, man. He'd be putting talcum powder on, and he would just revel in it because he knew we were just like, dude, please. Well, when he realized we were in this room and it was all glass with no curtains, and there were people walking down the sidewalk. It was a busy intersection of this city, and we were right on the sidewalk. They couldn't see us. He completely stripped down naked, and he was like walking next to people that were walking down the sidewalk, and he was next to the glass, and he was like stretching out and shaking his, just and people were like, they were only like 4 or 5 inches from him, and it was really funny. But to see him behind this glass, because he knew they couldn't see him, but he could see them, was definitely a memorable experience in this skyscraper, in this bank that employed us. And I often wonder if they had security cameras in that meeting room, because I would not be surprised. But we went out and played a kick butt show, and it was fun, man. There was probably 3,000 or 4,000 people out there at the Live at Five event, but little did they know what took place earlier. One day I'll tell you a few more. I hope this isn't boring. Hope you're finding these interesting. So one day we were in Baton Rouge, and Baton Rouge is a beautiful city, man. It's beautiful, and I'd never played Baton Rouge before. And I think it's LSU. Correct me if I'm wrong. LSU is at Baton Rouge, and we were playing at this bar, and it was packed. Right, it was like a Saturday night, and there were a lot of college kids there, and there were college kids who were bouncers at this place. Now, this is kind of an unfortunate story. This is some of the darker side of things that you see. And I remember we were leaving. We had unloaded. I had a successful night, had a good gig, and it was about 1:30, 1 o'clock, and there was a guy that had been drinking all night at the bar, and he was really drunk. And really, they probably should have cut this guy off hours before, but this guy was out. And he was so drunk, when we were loading out, they kept telling him, you got to go, last call, you got to go. And he couldn't comprehend what they were saying. And this guy was probably in his early 50s, okay? And his head was down on the bar, and they finally they got mad at him. And it infuriates me to even remember this story and to talk about it, but I just wanted to let you all know, this is some stuff you see. And they dragged him out of the bar. A couple of these I guess they're frat guys. They look like they were fraternity guys. Maybe they were former students. And they brought this guy out, and they threw him down the 3 steps, these wooden steps in front of the bar. And there were probably 200 or 300 students just congregating in the parking lot, talking and wondering what they were going to do next at 1:30 a.m., right? The night was still young. And they proceeded to kick this guy. They started beating this guy up, man. They were kicking this guy in the ribs and in the head. This guy, and I know the guy he might have said something rude to them. I didn't hear that. I don't think he did, but there's no way this guy could have been physically a threat to anybody. He was like a sloth. And they were just kicking this guy. And I remember these sorority girls were yelling, stop it, stop it. And they kicked and beat this guy into a bloody pulp, and just left him out on the steps, and all in front of all these witnesses. And to this day, I probably should have called the cops, but I'm not sure if the police would have even done anything. I don't know. This is a long time ago, but I just remember this poor guy getting kicked in the ribs and in the head. They could have killed this guy, and he didn't deserve it. They did this guy a disservice by serving him too much. They should have called this guy a cab or something. I don't know, but to see that guy get treated that way in front of this club was really sad. And you see the darker side of the entertainment industry and the clubs. You see things that the general public normally don't see when you're inside the machine. And I hopefully that kind of stuff doesn't happen often, but I saw it that night, and it was terrible. One night we were playing Greenville, South Carolina, and we were in this one club that we went to about every 4 weeks or every 6 weeks. We did these circuits, man. We were signed to do these circuits, so it was like wash, rinse, repeat. And we had these big crowds and these, our following, and we were in this club. And this guy Mike was Mikey, we called him. He was a great sound man. He was an old dude, probably in his late 60s. He was a great sound man, and he was kind of a little bit of a loose cannon. And one night we were hanging out about 1 a.m., 1:30, and we were just talking to him in the parking lot. And there were a few people hanging out, and Greenville's pretty conservative and kind of small. And Mike was like, check out my new gun. And Mike pulls out this gun. I can't remember what it was, a pretty big pistol. and he's like waving it around, and the gun fired off, and fortunately didn't shoot anybody. It could have, but it shot like in the air, and management found out about it, and we came back a few weeks later, and he had been fired, and we lost a really good sound man, a really good guy. And I often wonder, whatever happened to that dude. He probably went to work sound somewhere else, but man, that was a close call to be that close to someone's gun and it go off. And just, by the grace of God, I feel bad he got fired. He shouldn't have had his firearm out and shown it to everybody. But, someone could have died, or a couple people could have died. Who knows? But, things like that happen. You just, all of a sudden, someone pulls out a gun and shows it to you and it fires in the middle of the night. Crazy. One time we were playing Ole Miss. We were doing an Ole Miss frat party, and Ole Miss is fantastic, man. Mississippi is one of the most beautiful states, and Ole Miss campus was like those old college movies you see, like American Pie and stuff, where you see these movies and you only dream about going to colleges and campuses like that. They set us up on a trailer, and some of these gigs that you do, man, it's kind of crazy. You got to hire sound, or you rely on someone to do sound, and we weren't used to that. Normally we were playing some pretty high society places, but if the money was right, we do privates and frat parties, and man, they loved us. And let me tell you, that frat party was extremely crazy. There's a lot of stuff I really can't go into or don't want to put on YouTube, just to, because I don't want to talk about anybody else in the band or other people, hurt any feelings, but it was crazy. And we changed in one of the frat rooms, they were in a fraternity house, right? They were at this big frat house, and we went up to this dude's room that was in charge of hiring us, and this one guy walks in, and he's rummaging through his dryer. He's looking through his dryer, and he pulls out like 2 bottles of vodka and a big bottle of bourbon and a bottle of Jack out of his dryer. And I looked at him, I was like, why was your liquor in the dryer? He's like, you got to hide it around here, man. If you don't hide your liquor, man, people will steal it and drink it all. And he's like, y'all want a shot? And we're like, hell yeah. So he cracked it open. We all did shots. And then he's like, man, have a great show, guys. Thanks for doing this tonight. But I remember him coming into the frat room. It was like a scene from Porky's or something. I was like, okay. Those were good times, man. Couple more stories. One time we were playing my hometown. We were here in Nashville, and we only played Nashville twice, and both shows were outstanding. No ego. They were great. But the first time we played the Exit In, and we sold out the Exit In. And Billy Falcon came out that night and saw us play, which we didn't know he was out there. And Billy Falcon writes with Bon Jovi. He wrote, Keep the Faith and stuff. And that's how we wound up eventually getting hooked up with Bon Jovi and getting a Bon Jovi endorsement because of the Exit In show. But we were playing Exit In, and we were sold out. And all my coworkers were there and friends. And I was so proud because we had been a band already for a couple years. So we were at our peak. At the point that I left this band, I feel like we were really at our, it was like, like Def Leppard at Pyromania Hysteria. Not that I'm not comparing us to those greats, okay? But it's like that's at that point you really can't do much better musically, and we just killed it at Exit In, and it was middle of summer, and I took some allergy medicine because I didn't want to be like nasal dripping all over my talk box straw, and just I couldn't sing backups very well with my sinuses and stuff, and I got to do all these Richie Sambora things the best that I could. And we'd power down Red Bull vodkas, and I took too much allergy medicine, and I drank too much Red Bull vodka, and it messed me up, man, and it made me really sick to my stomach. And about halfway through the show, we were about to play Wanted Dead or Alive, which is one of the big ones, right? And our singer Jason we was talking about, there's a little spiel that he does where he talks for a couple minutes before we play it, and I know before the click track starts and stuff, there's a little bit of time, and there's a big dumpster behind the Exit In, and I've played Exit In before, so I'm very familiar with the venue. But there was this big dumpster in the back parking lot, and I ran backstage, and everyone probably figured, it's just Jason's spotlight. And I ran backstage and I ran out to that dumpster and I jumped up on the side of that dumpster and I just lost it and just straight for 20 seconds, just, you know, I know it's gross, but just vomited in the dumpster. And I ran right back in and grabbed my guitar, and right as I grabbed my guitar, my drummer started to click, and we started playing Wanted Dead or Alive, and I felt instantly better. But I'll never forget hometown gig and being the hero in front of all my friends and my family and my coworkers, and I had to leave before the big moment, and no one knows that until now. A couple people in the back parking lot saw it, and they're probably like, "Damn, why is that guy back here in a cowboy hat barfing in the dumpster?" All right, so how about one or two more stories? Let's see. Okay, so one of the cool things about being in a fairly successful band is sometimes you get access to things that you normally wouldn't, and we were really pampered as a band. I gotta say, the experience playing with them was unmatched. I mean, we had the best of both worlds. We were home during the week. We got to go away, party, and play music on the weekends. We were getting paid really good money. We were playing good tunes. We had great fans. We were, you know, these gigs paid well. They put us up in hotels. The only thing we had to pay for was our gas, really, and, you know, hot dogs or something on the way there. But our food, our lodging, everything was paid for. And our singer Jason had some contacts at Disney. He used to work for Disney a long time ago, and he had people that worked there still. And we went down to Orlando. We were playing a gig in Orlando, and I hadn't been to Disney World since I was probably like 5. And so Jason was like, "Hey, you know, let's go to the parks. We've got, you know, some time off today. You know, we're going to be okay. Well, let's take an extra day and just go to the parks before we go home." So we went, and we went up to the front gate, and he met with one of his people that he knew that worked for Disney, and they let us all in, and we had park passes. We could do anything we wanted to. Now you can't do a whole lot in one day at Disney World because there's just too much, right? But we went into Epcot, and we spent the entire day there. And Jason, knowing all the ins and outs and tricks to Disney, was great, because I would have been a fish out of water. You have to go to Disney World 1 or 2 times before you really get the system down. And we did all kinds of rides, and we rode on some of the boats going through Epcot. He knew all the little secret ways to get in and out of the park quickly, and we had an absolute wonderful time. We saw the British Invasion, which was the band at the time that played the Beatles tribute stuff. And me and Jason are huge Beatles fans, and it was magical sitting outside of England there and watching the Beatles play on the veranda and drinking a beer from Germany, which is right across the street. And so, you know, that was a great perk. We had lots of stuff thrown at us like that throughout the years. And because of that experience, I was able to, fortunate enough to be able to take my family, my kids and my wife at the time. We went to Disney World a couple of years in a row when they were younger, and I was able to give them that experience. So I was able to use the money I was making. You know, remember, I was working full time and I was doing this gig full time, so it was like 2 full-time jobs. So I tried to make up for it when I wasn't home a lot. I was either working or I was on the road. I did that for years, and my relationship suffered from it. But I also feel like it was very good I did it for my family. Yeah, it was a little selfish to do those things and to travel and play music because it's what I do. But I also felt like it was something I was doing for them, and I sacrificed a lot for them so I could provide, and I tried to reciprocate that as much as I could. So having that perk going to Disney and having that experience, I wanted to share that with my family. So experiences in that band would always bleed into my personal life, and to this day impact me, and I'm forever grateful to have that experience. So if anybody has ever traveled or played in a band, you know what I'm talking about. So anyway, there's some stories. If you like this content, there's many, many more and different things I could talk about related to Tales from the Road and experiences playing out. Let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to share, and we'll do some more of these. Please consider subscribing, comment below, and as always, have a great day. Peace out.